welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, okay, this afternoon we're obviously on to part 2 of our look at the Kill Devil Rums that are bottled by Edition Spirits and distributed by Hunter Lang. So after last week where we just looked at the two countries' rums, I've got a bit of a broader range of countries this afternoon, including a couple of distilleries that were, well, not new to me, but they were the first time that I'd tasted spirit from those particular distilleries. Interesting thing, I know, well, basically earlier on in the week, Wednesday, we had obviously a tasting in the shop, and included a couple of rums, and one which was sort of a competition, so I showed it blind, and of all the people then, nobody got it. Nobody figured out it was rum, and to me it was just so obvious. I mean, I even put it on, did the 4 square cask strength at the end of the tasting, and then we did the blind one, and I thought it's just going to be so obvious, but nobody got it. So I think obviously the general population need need to taste more rum, need more education about rum, because it is a fascinating, wonderful spirit. And as somebody kindly pointed out in the comments on the last episode of the show I did, we're talking about the stills sort of moving around, and certainly they seem to do the rounds, or certainly in Guyana they did anyway. Whether they move around quite so much in other countries, I couldn't honestly say, but they probably do. And so again, this is a whole fascinating part of the history of rum, I guess, and it's a bit of a shame, I suppose, insofar that that rum had its day, so to speak, a few years ago, and it's kind of plateaued off now. Everyone's going on about gin and building whiskey distilleries and things like that, and maybe more people should be looking at building new rum distilleries, or at least something like that. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, because obviously you don't need to have a distillery in, say, the Caribbean to make rum. You can obviously import your molasses, make your rum. Obviously it's not going to have kind of like the same historical context, but why not? Why not a rum distillery in Scotland? Actually, I think there is, isn't there? Or was there there's certainly a Scottish rum, I think, off the top of my head, but yeah, why not? Why not build a rum distillery in England? Why not? Anyway, so today's tasting, like I say, I'm not going to go into any great depth about all these the different distilleries. I mean, certainly if you want to find out that information, the information is out and about on the internet. So I guess we'll just introduce this afternoon's sort of lineup. Okay, so we'll be kicking off with 14-year-old. This is from Fiji, the South Pacific distillery, and I think it's probably, it's definitely the first time I've ever tasted anything from that particular distillery. It was distilled in February of 2002 and bottled sometime this year at 46%. So that'll be an interesting one to kick off with. Then we're going to move on to a 16-year-old. This is from Barbados, the lesser well-known of the Barbados distilleries. Obviously Foursquare probably being the most well-known. This is from the West Indies Rum Distillery. It was distilled in June of 2000, again bottled sometime this year, and bottled at 46%, so should be interesting. Then we're going to move on to Nicaragua. Now this is from an unspecified distillery in Nicaragua. It's cask strength, so it was bottled at 59.5%. It's 17 years old, and if I can find my notes on it, it was distilled, oh god, when was it distilled? I can't find that information here, which I thought I had. Oh, there it is. It was possibly distilled in 1998. That's probably why I couldn't find the information. And bottled possibly in 2015. I had noticed that with the Kill Devil rums, the earlier releases were all bottled at cask strength, so this was one of their very first releases, whereas the subsequent releases all seem to have been bottled at 46%. I don't know why that is, but it is what it is, as they say. The second 17-year-old we'll be looking at, again from a distillery that is I've not tasted from before, is the Cuban Sancti Spiritus distillery. Like I said, 17 years old, distilled in June of 1999 and bottled sometime this year at 46%. And then we have two from Jamaica. Now I love Jamaican rums. I mean, they tend to be quite broad and it's just classical Jamaican, you know, sort of welcoming and big and fruity and all that kind of stuff. This one we have actually got in stock, so that tells you what I think of it. Although in the shop it's priced at $75.95, it's a little bit cheaper on the website. This is from the Hampton Distillery. It was distilled in December of 1998 and bottled sometime, like I said, this year at 46%. And finally, another 24-year-old. Now, because I decided to stock the 24-year-old Enmore, I really couldn't go for this. I mean, this is over £200 a bottle, but we'll obviously see whether it's actually worth that £200 price tag when we actually get there. So this one was distilled in 1991, bottled in 2015, again at cask strength, 62%. Can you believe that for a 24-year-old spirit? 62%, wow, unbelievable. So I think that's possibly going to be highlight of the afternoon. So there you have it. That's this afternoon's little lineup. Should we make a start with the Fijian then? Right. Okay. So let's see what the nose gives us then, shall we? Classic. I would guess possibly column still. It's got that sort of little bit of faintiness, possibly. That sort of like high-toned, pungent, unsweetened pineapple, apricot. A little bit of sort of unripened banana, oily, sort of almost kind of Guyana-ish. You know, I've certainly tasted rums from Guyana that kind of have this sort of youthful, oily, spirity, high-toned kind of character. And it's really inviting, really impressive. I mean, this is proper rum, you know. This is none of your sort of soft, molassy kind of fruit, sort of commercial style of rum. This is definitely the edgier end of the spectrum, and yeah, I really like this. Palate. Opens up with a lovely sweetness. It's got a great balance between sort of sweeter, sugary kind of character and a more sort of herbally, spirity, oily kind of character. Again, it's got that sort of unripened banana, the sort of youthful-ish kind of subtropical fruits. And again, a little bit fainty, but that's kind of part of its kind of charm, I guess, with that sort of youthful, oily, intense kind of character. Mouth-watering, a little bit of coffee on the finish, but a nice light kind of golden rum. Just an easy going, but yeah, it has some lovely balance, lovely complexity. I think that's rather good, actually. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Barbados rum. Let's see what nose gives us on this end. Fuller, more kind of brown sugar, molasses, sort of sub kind of molasses, kind of brown sugar sort of thing. It's not a real dense, heavy molasses kind of nose, but it's obviously got that kind of sort of golden syrup, treacle, molasses kind of character going on. Really dense, quite medicinal now. After you give it a little bit of time, the sort of slightly agricole kind of notes kind of come through. I mean, it's possible that this might have been made with both molasses and sugarcane juice. And, you know, again, this is another thing with rum distilleries. Not only have you got obviously the different stills that you can play around with, you've got the different sort of raw materials that you can use. You can combine them. You know, the potential for complexity with rum is endless, really. At the end of the day, and this has got a lovely, dense, rich nose. Like I said, quite a lot of sort of kind of coffee, toffee, golden honey, that kind of thing. But again, it's got a little bit of an edge to it, that herbalness, that sort of slight agricole kind of note. Just sort of stops it being overly sweet and overly cloying. There's even a sort of a slight kind of, almost kind of salinity. Yeah, that's interesting. Palate. Again, it kind of opens up with a slight. It's a bit crisper. It's not quite sweet as the nose would lead you to believe, but it kind of opens up with that sort of slight sort of molassy kind of character with a nice richness. There's certainly some dried fruit, some nuts, almost kind of walnutty. Nice kind of citrus kind of note kind of comes through on the middle, and then in comes the agricole, the herbalness, the sort of intensity. That's a little bit of kind of marzipan-y sort of oakiness on the finish, but again, we're not talking a huge amount of oak. It's very, very subtle, understated, so you're getting all of this kind of lovely kind of molassy and dried fruit kind of character. So yeah, another fabulous cask. I think that is really good. Okay, on to the first of the two cask strength bottlings. This is the Nicaraguan 17-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us then, shall we? Now that's nice. That's kind of, the alcohol isn't too intrusive, surprisingly enough, for something near to sort of 60%. It's got a kind of almost whiskey-like kind of nose. There's sort of an almost kind of barley and apricot, and there's a little bit of wood smoke. It's got lots of verve. It doesn't have any kind of medicinal agricole kind of notes, but it's got some citrus. And like I said, I mean, this is very, very whiskey-like, and I'm sure you could be fooled into thinking this wasn't a rum. Some nice golden syrupy kind of notes. Touch of vanilla. Again, all really nicely complex. Really interesting. And again, I'm getting no real alcohol notes hitting the nose. It's certainly not. It's just so well integrated, the alcohol. Palate. No spirit burn whatsoever. I mean, that is just so smooth and soft, you would not think that was near to 60%. It's a little bit darker on the palate. There's a little bit more of a molasses kind of character to kick off with. Again, it's got a lovely sort of citric note kind of coming through. There's a touch of burnt wood. There's more dried fruits, prunes, raisins, a little bit of cane sugar. lovely crisp finish. I mean, obviously that is the alcohol emphasising that sort of citric note right on the finish, but it has a lovely palate cleansing kind of character. Again, it's kind of almost whiskey-like, not quite so whiskey-like as maybe the nose, but it has that sort of, you know, sort of elegance to it. You know, it's not a big, bruising, heavy pot still molassed kind of rum. Really, really well balanced, and yeah, that's impressive. Okay, so let's move on to the second of the two 17-year-olds. This is the Cuban Sancti Spiritus distillery bottling. Let's see what the nose gives us then, shall we? Now that is just completely different. This is really peppery. You know, it's almost kind of tequila-like. It's got that kind of pulped fruit kind of character. Banana, and just pepper, licorice, almost kind of pure aniseed. Touch of menthol, touch of almost sort of agricole kind of notes, a little bit of oak as well. Again, it's like oily in a sort of Guyana-y kind of style, but wow, that's peppery. That is really, really intense, really pleasant, which is why I went for it. I mean, this was just sort of like, you know, again, a completely different side to a rum. It's kind of like a rum that possibly thinks it's a tequila, you know. It's just really, really interesting. Oh, I just love that kind of mentholated note that kind of comes through with a little bit of time. Oh, that's fantastically good. Palate? Oh, what a finish. Sort of lovely kind of demerara and granulated sugar kind of finish. Lovely citric middle, balanced, little bit of medicinal sort of pungent menthol on the finish as well. A little bit more, it kind of opens with a little bit more oak, a little bit more vanilla. It's kind of softer, but once that citrus kind of comes in, you're getting getting that kind of lovely kind of crisp citric intensity, mouth-watering, beautiful finish. Like I said, it's got that lovely kind of combination of sugars and a little bit of menthol, and that kind of cleans out your sinuses, so to speak. So I mean, if you've got a bit of a cold, have a drop of that, and that will certainly do you the world of good, I think. So so yeah, fantastic stuff. That I like that. Right, let's move on to the first of the two Jamaicans then. This is the 17-year-old from the Hampton Distillery, so let's see what the nose gives us on this then. Oh yes, that's Jamaican. That's big, that's broad, that's juicy, getting loads of golden honey, a little bit of menthol, some eucalyptus, fleshy banana, apricot, pineapple. But that kind of, that slight mentholated note again gives it a sort of a bit of an edge to it. It's just pineapple, sweet pineapple chunks in syrup. You know, it's wow. That's intense. It has to be said. You know, but like I said, you know, the sort of the slightly herbal note, the sort of the citrus kind of really balances it up, and it's not kind of too sweet and too one-dimensional. But well, if you love pineapple chunks, you're going to love this. But unfortunately, I don't think it's available still. But let me just check on that one. Yes, it is. He says, "Stupid me! It's one of the ones that we have in stock now." So yeah, like I said, if you love crystallised pineapple chunks. This is your baby. Power. Oh, that's a lovely finish. Juicy, supple, sweet, but again balanced by the citrus. Pineapple chunks, funnily enough. A touch of apple maybe, certainly some apricot, definitely banana, pineapple. Wow, it's just a real big, chunky, fruity Jamaican whiskey, Jamaican rum, sorry. Full of character and lovely balance. Like I said, it's got that sort of lovely kind of crisp citrus note, a little bit of menthol kind of coming through right on the finish. Touch of coffee possibly, you know, it's really complex. That is an absolute classic, really well balanced Jamaican rum, and oh yeah, fantastic stuff. And finally on to the Hampton 24-year-old. Let's see what else gives us on this end, and let's see if it's worth 200 odd quid then, shall we? Oh, that's got some maturity. Wonderfully elegant. A little bit more woody, darker, spicier. Again, sort of whiskey-like kind of note happening. Vanilla. No, not whiskey-like, more cognac-y in actual fact. That sort of lighter, dried fruit kind of rancio. Lovely oxidation character. Some vanilla coming through as well. Oh, wonderfully intense and elegant. It's got that, now getting that sort of slightly dusty, mature American oak character kind of coming through. Really, really complex. I mean, it's still got some lovely kind of, you know, broad Jamaican fruit, but that is all kind of starting to sit in the background as you're getting a little bit, obviously, more oak character, more oak spices, vanillins, and the kind of oxidation character is a little bit more prevalent than the sort of like the fruit character, but it's still there. And oh my god, that's incredible. That has got some real depth to it. Palate. Well, that's got a lovely kind of darker fruit character. You can taste the alcohol in this one. I mean, it is 62%, but even so, it's just so well contained within that sort of rich, molassy kind of fruit character. There's a bit more tannin, again, quite wood spicy, a little bit darker, but still has that sort of kind of cognac-y kind of dried fruit rancio. Real spicy, tongue-tingling finish. That is really, really impressive. Full, weighty, Jamaican, big, bouncy, and that's stunning, stunning rum. Right, okay, so let's sum up today's episode of the show. Bloody good is all I can say, and I'm glad I actually made the decision to actually get these in stock, because you should buy them if you love amazingly good rum. These are fantastic, they really are good, you know, and it just shows you the sort of like the breadth of styles and complexity that you can get with rum, and you know, where you have some that sort of like a very sort of obviously rummy, some a little bit more sort of whiskey like, cognac-y like, you know, it's just, you know, it's just the sort of the difference in character is just, I thought, really, really interesting. So yeah, the Fijian, really, really like that. Nice light sort of elegant, possibly column still, real sort of interesting, oily, sub kind of Guyana kind of character, really enjoyable. The Barbados, yeah, again, really interesting sort of classic kind of Barbados character. Has a sort of an element of sort of Jamaica and those kind of things, but again, sort of really fruity, really nice. The Nicaraguan, yeah, okay, again, lovely, great rum, quite whiskey-like in essence, and shows a sort of a different character, a different side to rum, and certainly I think if you're completely new to rum and you like whiskey, then it's a kind of good sort of starting point. I mean, I certainly know of rums that have been, say, aged in ex-sherry casks, for example, that have that kind of, if you like sort of sherry cask matured whiskey, it's kind of got a kind of an element that you're kind of comfortable with. And it was, I forget which, I think it was the Banks, I think, off the top of my head, and that had a lovely kind of character which you could sort of quite use as a sort of starter, shall we say. So yeah, if you're a whiskey fanatic, then that would have been certainly the one for you. The Sancti Spiritus, yeah, great rum, really enjoyed that. Glad I decided to go for that particular one. Again, if you like pineapple chunks, then that is your baby, so to speak. And wonderful balance with that sort of mentholated sort of agricole kind of note kind of coming through, to just make sure that it didn't get all too sweet and flabby, which you certainly don't want, shall we say. The Jamaican, the 17-year-old Jamaican, well, as far as I can see, that's kind of classic Jamaican, big, juicy, fruity, inviting, lots and lots of character, and just an all-round really enjoyable rum. And the 24-year-old, well, yeah, it probably is worth over 200 quid. I mean, it's a lot of money, and I did sort of and ah, but I went for the 24-year-old Enmore, which was a little bit cheaper, and as much as I'd love to have had that, I can't imagine too many people shelling out that kind of money, but people do. If you've got deep pockets and love great spirits, then why not, as they say. And that was just a wonderful old Jamaican. I mean, still had that kind of broad, robust, juicy fruit character of a Jamaican rum, with a little bit more added oxidation rancio, a little bit more wood spice, that kind of thing. So and 62%, and it just did not taste like it at all. It did have that kind of slight mouth-watering alcohol character right on the finish, but certainly I don't think it needed any water whatsoever. So just absolutely stunning, really good. So so all I can say is, I think sort of Hunter Lang or Edition Spirits or whoever have bottled some amazing single cask rums, and there's not a lot of them about, it has to be said. This is really good, really interesting stuff, and hopefully they'll carry on bottling them, because I think rum will have its day again. Like all of these spirits, they kind of cycle through being popular. I mean, like I said, gin seems to be riding a sort of the crest of the wave at the moment, and it doesn't seem to, at the moment, show any sign of crashing down to earth. I mean, funnily enough, I'm tasting samples for the World Spirits Awards at the moment, and I'm doing London Dry Gin, and I've got 30 odd spirits from London Dry Gins from around the world, and to be frankly honest with you, a lot of them are pretty dull. You sort of taste them and go, okay, that tastes like a juniper based gin, not getting a great deal of interest. And I think we've kind of hit peak point. I mean, we've had no end of novelty bloody gins, and and I think there's just so many of them coming out, and you think, well, do I need to stick another bloody London Dry on the shelf at the end of the day? But rum, yeah, plenty of time for a great rum and a great whiskey, should we say. But anyway, that's enough waffling. Next week we'll be probably back to the whiskey. Don't know what we're going to be doing. Probably figure it out sometime during the week anyway. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed both these episodes on these great single cask rums. I hope you'll buy one of them. You know, please. They are available in the shop and online, so you know where to go. So anyway, all that's left to say is good dramming and good afternoon.